Hello, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Mary and today's video is going to be my series catch up for 2023. So this is a video series that I started on my channel, I think the first full year that I did this channel, where basically I'm going to go over all of the series that I started, finished, or continued in or DNF'd in 2023, and I will also touch on some series that I'm in the middle of that I made no progress on in 2023. I'm going to start with books that I read in 2023. So first up, I'll just go through some series that I did not start or finish, but I did continue in 2023. So I continued in the Nevermore series by Jessica Townsend. I read the first book last October 2022, and then I read the second book this year, in the spring, I believe. That is The Trials of Morgan Crow is the first book. I don't remember what the second book is off the top of my head, but it's a middle grade fantasy series. I am planning on continuing in that, and it is an ongoing series. I also continued in Stormlight this year by Brandon Sanderson. So I did read book 2.5 back in, I believe, October, and that is Edge Dancer. So it's like a shorter novel. I don't think it's fully a novella because it's like 250 pages, but it is a shorter book that follows some side characters that are going to be more important to the story later. This is an epic fantasy series. I think I finished book 2. It was my first book of 2022. So it's been a while, but I am hoping to continue in that still. I think the 5th book is set to come out at some point in the near future. I follow Brandon Sanderson on YouTube, and he talks about his progress, and I believe he has fully finished Stormlight 5, so now we'll go through edits. I don't know when it will be released. That is the only information that I have for you. Series that I finished in 2023, I did wrap up the Good Girls Guide to Murder series. That was the first book I read this year, one of the first books I read this year. It's a trilogy. It's a YA mystery series about this girl who, in the first book, she has a podcast that she starts because there's a crime in her town that's been solved, but she doesn't think that the person who was caught for the crime actually did it. So for her school project, she's looking into the crime, basically, and then the series goes on from there. This book series is actually really good. I really enjoyed it. I would consider revisiting it in the future. There is a prequel to this that I have not read, and I'm considering reading it, but I'm probably not going to. At this point, it's not really on my TBR to read, but I might at some point in the future. I'm not saying I will never read it. I'm counting the series as finished. Same kind of for the next series that I'm going to talk about, which is the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series by Rick Riordan. I don't know how he pronounces his name. I hear it different ways all the time. But this is a middle grade series. I think it shifts between middle grade and young adult. It's definitely middle grade at the start, but the characters do age up throughout the series, and it originally follows Percy Jackson, who is a son of Poseidon, and he goes to this place called Camp Half-Blood where other people who are demigods go, and he has to be trained to be a fighter, and he goes on all various quests. I finished that series finally. I originally started the series when I was in the 8th grade. No, I started it when I was in 6th grade. I read the second book when I was in 6th grade, never read any of the other books, and then in 8th grade, my 8th grade boyfriend had the books and he was really into them, so he was letting me borrow them, and then we broke up and I never finished the series. So now I finally finished the series a whopping 15 years later. The other thing I wanted to bring up, if you want me to watch the Percy Jackson TV show on Disney Plus and compare it to the books, I might do that. I also might rewatch the movie with Logan Lerman. I rewatched it semi-recently, but I might rewatch that again and compare that to the new show, to the books, and see what has changed. I assume the books are going to be much more true to the original source material than the movie is, but we'll see. Another series that I'm counting as completed in 2023 is the Scythe Trilogy. I had already read this trilogy back in 2021 and 2022, but I reread it this year. And I also read the short story collection that accompanies it called Gleanings. I really enjoyed my time reading that. That's another YA dystopian series about this future world where death doesn't exist anymore. But there's this community government type job. It's separate from the government, but it's called the Scythedom. And the first book follows two high school students who have been selected to be apprenticing for the Scythedom. And at the end of it, scythes are the only people who can cause people to die, but they have to do that for population control, if that makes sense. I'm doing a really bad job of explaining that one, but it's a really cute series. I really enjoy it. I started and finished The Queen of the Tearling by Erica Johansson this year. I read the whole trilogy and I read the prequel. I don't recommend the prequel. I talked about that in my wrap-up where I read it. I believe that was my November wrap-up, so I'll link that if you're interested. But I did really, really love these books. I devoured them. I was really disappointed by the ending of the series, but I can sort of get on board with it. But the prequel, I just don't think is worth your time. So that's a fantasy series about this girl, Kelsey, who has been raised in the forest, like Sleeping Beauty style, because her mom was murdered or assassinated. Her mom was the queen of this country. And when Kelsey is 19, that's when she can take over the throne. So the Queen's Guard goes and gets her and brings her back to take her rightful place on the throne. And then the story sort of goes from there. Moving on to book series that I started in 2023, I started Me Before You by Jojo Moyes, which I believe is a trilogy. I'm not sure if I'm going to continue in this. My mom really likes these books, and I really enjoyed the first one, but it stands alone as its own story, and I don't know if I want to read it again. There's a movie about this that I also watched that I enjoyed. A lot of people have problems with the endings of this book, and I guess I do too, but I can sort of just look at it as a one-off story and not trying to like generalize on a whole population of people. If you don't know what Me Before You is about, it's about this woman who gets hired on to be not a caretaker, but like a companion for a paraplegic who got into an accident, and that's why he's a paraplegic. And then it's sort of their love story, but not super their love story. I guess it is their love, I don't know, but it was good. I liked it, I cried. The next series that I started in 2023 is the Wer Children series by Shauna McGuire. And this is a series of novellas about kids who have gone to Portal Fantasy worlds, and then when they come back, they have a hard time adjusting to reality in our world, so they go to the school called the School for Wayward Children. I only read the first in the series. I am interested in continuing it, and I believe there are going to be 10 books, and then that's going to be it. So I think it's supposed to end either this year, 2024, or 2025. I'm not entirely sure on that. I have not picked up book 2, but I do plan on doing so. The next series that I started is the Wolves of Mercy Falls series by Maggie Stiefvater. And this is a series that I do plan on continuing. I really enjoyed this first book. I was kind of surprised. It's about this like teenage girl who has this really deep connection to the wolves that live in her woods. And it turns out that the wolves are actually like werewolves, like boys who turn into wolves. And then there's like a romance element. It's very YA from like 2008, but that's when I was reading that kind of story. So for me, it was a very nostalgic read and I really enjoyed it. The next series that I started, and I do plan on continuing, is The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. I don't know what the series is called, but it's about this girl who is living in Egypt in the 1800s. I don't know exactly when it's supposed to be set, but she's living in Cairo, and she basically has this magical ability to tell when people are sick, but she's been conning people and telling them that they're sick, and she has a deal with the apothecary where he will prescribe them all this like expensive medicine, and then she gets a cut of the profits. And then one day she accidentally summons a djinn and then gets swept away to this magical world. And that's like the premise of the story. I really, really enjoyed this story as well. And I do want to continue. I'm gonna continue in this series. This is one of those that I like. I even put the second book on my TBR at one point and I just couldn't get to it because I don't own it. And it's one of those books that I read the first one physically, so I would like to read the rest of them physically. I don't want to switch to the audiobook on this one. The next series, I actually read the first 2 books this year, and I believe that is all that is out. I'm not sure how many there are going to be, but it's the Part of Your World series by Abby Jimenez. So it's a series of standalone romances. And the first one follows Alexis, I believe, and David or Daniel, I can't remember his name. But Alexis is a surgeon at this hospital in Minneapolis, and one day she's driving home from a funeral, and she's sort of in the middle of nowhere, Minnesota, and her car gets stuck in a ditch, and the guy who comes to pull her out, they have sort of a rough like start to their relationship, but then they end up having a one-night stand. And it turns out he's like the mayor of this town. He's also runs like a bed and breakfast. It's very like small town romance, but that one's their romance. And then the second book was nominated for the Goodreads Choice Awards this year, I believe, and it's about a friend of the girl, the main girl from the first book, who was also a surgeon at this hospital, whose fiance, I think, cheated on her or something. And so she is in this like competition to become head surgeon at her hospital, and she ends up being in a competition against this guy, and then it's their love story. They like write notes to each other back and forth. That's why it's called Yours Truly. I really like these books. I will be continuing in this when they come out. Next series that I started, A Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin. I read the first book in this in October, sometime. And I don't know if I'm going to continue in this one, to be honest. So let me know in the comments down below if you think I should. I owned the first one. That's pretty much why I read it. I think it came from my husband's like childhood bedroom books or whatever. But this is a YA story, and it follows this kid who has magical abilities, and he's got like really strong magical abilities. And so he has to go to the school to learn how to hone them. To be honest, I wanted more time at the school, but at the end of the first book, which is only like 230 pages, it's really short. He's already been a kid, shown this magical promise, gone to school, graduated school, and been sent off into the world. And to be honest with you, magical schools are like one of my favorite settings, so I don't know if I'm going to care that much about the rest of the series. But if you have read them, please let me know if you think that I would, or if you really liked them, or also if you really didn't like them and thought they were boring or whatever. I just don't know if I want to do that. You know what I mean? Because I have a lot of series on this list that I want to get to. So let me know if I should. I also started Btown by Frederick Bachman. This is another one that I like don't know if I need to continue in, but I did love Btown. Like I cried. It was great. It's about this hockey team in a small town in Sweden or Norway. I think Sweden. Now I can't remember, but it's a small town, and the town basically revolves around this hockey team. And then one night, one of the hockey players assaults a girl, and it's about how the town reckons with that. It was really, really good. Obviously, know the content before going into it, but I really loved that book, and I'm really glad that I read it. I think it's a trilogy as well, and I don't know if I'm going to finish it, but I'm considering it. Again, let me know if you think it's worth it. The first book definitely stands on its own, and I could be happy just reading that. The next series I want to talk about is the Black Dagger Brotherhood by J.R. Ward, which is a series of paranormal romances. I started this in November, and I'm currently like 60% of the way through book 3. So I finished book 1 in December. I read book 2, and then I immediately started book 3 because book 2 left off on a cliffhanger, and I'm really enjoying this series. So it's basically follows this group of vampire males who are part of the Black Dagger Brotherhood, which basically means that they're like their race's warriors to protect them. And there are these creatures called lessers, which are humans who have sold their souls to just kill vampires. And so it's like a war between the lessers and the Brotherhood. And each of the stories follows a different brother primarily and has like his love story or his like romance. I will say the romances are kind of the weakest part of this series for me, which is so weird to say, but I'm really invested in the romance that's like being featured in book 3, which is again why I started reading it right away, because it's the brother that I'm like most fascinated by. Which if you've read the series and you know who it is, you're probably either like, yeah, I get it, or like, what the hell is wrong with you? But just, I'm really enjoying it so far. It's like a 20-something book series. I do not know if I will read the whole thing, but at this point, I'm having such a good time that I'm not planning on stopping anytime soon. And I do have whichever book, so at this point, it will be the 4th book, because I'm filming this on December 30th. It'll be the 4th book that I have on my TBR for January. So I'm having a good time. I'm enjoying it. The next series that I started, and I'm on the fence on whether I'm going to continue, is A Winter's Promise. I don't know what the series is called. The second book is The Memory of Babel, or the 3rd book. I don't know. But it's a series translated from French. It's a YA fantasy series. And it follows this girl who grew up on one, like, basically planet. And she agrees to marry a guy from another planet. It's like a political marriage thing. And then, I don't even know. Nothing really happened for me. Like, she's learning about the political things that are happening on this other planet, and she's learning that it's a very dangerous place for her to be, but I just frankly find it a little boring. So again, this is one of those where like, let me know if the second book is more interesting than the first, and maybe I'll consider continuing in it. I haven't fully decided. I might pick up book 2 if I finish my January TBR, which I think I will, because I think I have audiobooks for almost everything except for the Black Dagger Brotherhood book, which is not going to be a problem to get through. So I think I'm going to try to pick up book 2 in that series once I finish my January TBR and just see how I feel about it. But if I'm not loving it, I probably won't continue in it. And then another book series that I started and I'm pleasantly surprised by is Girl Meets Duke by Tessa Dare. So this series is a series of Regency romances. I don't know what the second one is going to follow, but I read the first one in one day. I was like fully enthralled with it. I loved it. But it's about this girl, and I'm not going to remember their names now. But there's this girl, Emma, I think. Her name is Emma. And she works as a seamstress, and she shows up in a wedding dress because this duke was supposed to marry this woman. They never paid her for her work on this wedding dress that she did. Their engagement fell apart, and she shows up in his study in this wedding dress, and he wants an heir. So he's like, I'll tell you what, why don't you marry me? We won't have any like real contact. It'll be a marriage of convenience, except for I will come to you every night until you give me an heir, and then you can go live in this country house by yourself. And she's like, sure, I'll marry you. But also she doesn't just want like that simple of a marriage. So I don't know. I really loved it. It was a really cute love story. I'm sensing a theme in the type of heroes that I like reading about. So that's interesting. I do plan on continuing in that series that I've DNF'd in 2023. So the first one that I'm definitely not going to continue in is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. I read the first one. I thought it was fine. I didn't really get it. I didn't think it was that funny. Like it wasn't for me. So I'm not going to continue in that series. Another series I'm not going to continue in is Arsenic and Adobo by Mia P. What is her name? Mia P. Meninsala? I don't know. It's right here. I don't plan on continuing in this series. I thought it was fine. It's a cozy mystery series about a girl who, I think her ex-boyfriend ends up overdosing, or not overdosing. I don't know, he eats at her family's restaurant and then dies. And so they have to like figure out what happened to him. I liked it. I thought it was fine. I read it back in January. No, I read it whenever the buzzword was like flavor words, because I used adobo as my flavor, which I don't even know if that counts, but I did it. And it was fine. So the next series, I did not continue in this in 2023, but I've sort of decided that I'm not going to read any more of the Vampire Chronicles, partially because I don't really care about it. And I remember thinking it was kind of cringy. It's like a shapeshifter paranormal romance series about people who turn into honey badgers and they like fight a lot. And fight scenes are not for me. So it just wasn't for me. I read that back in 2022 and I've just taken it all off my TBR. I'm not going to read it. The next series I'm not going to continue in is Descender, which is a comic book series or a graphic novel series. They don't have the graphic novels in my library. I'm not going to buy them, so I'm not going to read it. The Space Odyssey series by Arthur C. Clarke. I loved 2001: A Space Odyssey. I read 2010 or whatever and didn't really care for it. So I'm just going to cut my losses and say that 2001: A Space Odyssey should have been a single book. If you disagree with that, again, you can feel free to let me know and I might look up what happens in the other books, but I'm not going to read them at this point. I've also decided to DNF The Beautiful series by Renee Ahdieh, which is another paranormal, like YA paranormal romance series. It starts off about vampires, and I really liked the first book, and then the second book got really weird, but I felt like I could invest in it, and then it's got 4 books total, and I just don't really think I'm gonna read it. I don't know. There's another Renee Ahdieh series that I'm in the middle of that's just a duology, so I'm more inclined to pick up the second book in that and just finish it out. It's not on my DNFs list, but this time next year when I'm doing this, it might be, because if I don't read it in this coming year, I don't think I'm ever gonna read it. It's been so long now since I read the first one. I think I read both of those series back in 2020. So this is a list of series that I did not continue in 2023 that I still plan on continuing in, that are completely released. So the Robert Langdon series, which is what Angels and Demons is from, I read the first 2 books of those in high school. I own all the other books now. I just haven't read them. This is not like a priority thing for me, and I'm not worried about never getting to them. I think I will get to them at some point, but I'm gonna have to make myself read them. So at some point this will probably go on like books to read. Maybe I'll do it in like a reading blog or something. Let me know if that would be interesting to you. But I did like those first 2 books, and I did find the other books, I think at little free libraries, and I think I got one from Goodwill. So like I didn't like invest so much money in this. I don't really care if I don't finish the series, but also I'm not giving up on it right now. The Bone Witch by Rinch Pecco. I started in 2021. I did not like the first book. I really enjoyed the second book, and I never finished it, so I need to finish the series as well. Again, this time next year, if I have not read the third book, I'll probably just DNF this as well, because at this point, it's been 3 years. But still, The Hainish Cycle. This is one that I don't mind taking my time with. It's an Ursula K. Le Guin series. The Left Hand of Darkness is actually book 4, but I read it first. And this is a series of standalones, I'm pretty sure. I think it's like in a connected world, or like galaxy. And I think the thread that runs through all of them is this group that's trying to, like, it's basically like the UN, but for the galaxy. So they're trying to establish this, like, what is that called? A relationship where all the planets can, like, trade with each other and not go to war with each other and just, like, interact better, if that makes sense. I do plan on continuing this. I liked The Left Hand of Darkness a lot. I thought it was really interesting. So at some point, I would like to read the other books in that series. Here it is, The Wrath of the Dawn by Renee Ahdieh. This is what I was talking about. It's a 1001 Arabian Nights retelling. And I remember liking the first one fine. I wasn't like super drawn to it, which is why I didn't finish it right away. And I'm kicking myself because then I wouldn't have to think about it. But the second book is The Rose and the Dagger. And I think I am planning on reading that at some point still, but we'll see if I actually do that. The Broken Earth Trilogy by N.K. Jemison. I read the first book. I really enjoyed it, but it was also a lot. And so I want to continue in the series, and I don't think I'm going to DNF this at any point, but I do need to actually like push myself to do that. So that's another one that's on my list of continuing series that I need to finish. I think it's just a trilogy, so I should be able to read it. Another one that's low priority for me is the Brown Sisters trilogy. I've read the first 2 books now. I read the second book this year. Oh, it should have been on my list for this year. I don't know why it wasn't. Okay, but I read the second book earlier this year. I vlogged my experience reading it. I will link it for you. I just have Act Your Age, Eve Brown left. And that was actually the one that I was most excited to read when I started reading this series, but I just haven't picked it up yet. At some point I will, if I need like a romance, maybe a cute contemporary romance. I will say I don't love this book or these books as much as a lot of other people do, which I think is part of why it took me so long to finish or to pick up the second book after I read the first book. Because I read the first book in 2021. I read the second book in 2023, and I haven't read the third book yet. And I guess I'm just not as attached to the series as I feel like a lot of people were. The series got a ton of hype back probably in 2021 when I picked up the first book, or 2020 maybe even. But it's not for me. I just don't love it as much as everyone else did. The cozy mystery series I'm in the middle of is Firefly Junction. I read the first 3 books in this series, and I believe those are the only books that my library has audiobooks for. I'm gonna see if Everand has the audiobooks of the other ones. I could also read them as ebooks. That wouldn't be terrible. This is a cozy mystery series that primarily follows Sunny, who is... At the first book, I think she just got divorced, so she moves to this small town that her sisters both live in, and she's going to renovate this B&B, but there's a ghost in the B&B, so that's part of it. She also is a journalist, so she's working for the small town newspaper, and she keeps getting involved in all these like murders and crimes that are happening. And then she sort of has like a love-hate relationship, or like a hate-to-love relationship kind of, with the police chief in this town named Jackson Brady or Brady Jackson. I can't remember which one it is. It's cute. It's sweet. I like the setting of it a lot. So I do want to continue in this one. I just haven't yet. Suki Stackhouse series. I mentioned this in my 24 to read in 2024. I have a ton of these books back here. It's all of those. I guess I don't have that many. But I own like the first 8 in the series. And then I think I own like the 10th and then the 14th. So essentially I just need to read through the series. It's another paranormal romance series. I will say I'm liking Black Dagger Brotherhood a little bit more. But Suki Stackhouse has the ability to like read minds kind of, and there's also like shapeshifters in this world, but she ends up getting in a relationship with this vampire named Bill in the first book and gets sort of swept up into his world. She never knew why she could read minds before meeting Bill. So it's a really interesting book series. I just haven't continued in it. I think I read another book this year. Yeah, so I read the first 2. And then I read the 3rd book in January of 2023. And I just need to kick myself into gear and really like read more of those books. The next series is the Gim of Doyle series. I started this in December 2021. I remember really, really liking this book, but I never continued in it for some reason. So it's another series. If I do continue in this one, I'll probably have to start from the beginning. But should I put it on the DNFs list? I don't know. I'm going to come back to that. I don't know if I should just DNF it or what. It's another one that I don't know if I should DNF. See, none of these are like hard DNFs. A lot of these are just series that I'm like not interested in actively reading right now. So the next one is the Shadow of the Wind series by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. I've read the first 2 books. I didn't read any of them this year. I think there are 4 total, but they're kind of standalones. Like they're all about books within books, and they're all set in Barcelona in this like just post-Civil War, I think. I would be interested in continuing in the series. They're very like dark and gothic. And to be honest with you, I like that more now than I did when I first read the first 2. So I'm wondering if I would like the vibe of his writing more now. These are other books that like got tons of hype. People love these books and I enjoyed them, but they weren't like top favorites. And I don't really remember, like I remember certain things about them, but I don't remember like fully which happened in which book. And like, I don't know, they're not the same cast of characters, so I shouldn't be getting them confused like that, but I do, if that makes sense. Oh God, should I DNF this too? We'll revisit it at the end of the year. So, The Midnight Lie by Marie Rakowski is a duology. Marie Rakowski wrote the Winter's Trilogy, which I devoured. I really, really liked that series. It was so good. It's like a YA fantasy romance series, and this is set in the same world, okay? But I don't really remember what happens in it. Maybe I should just DNF this. I'm gonna move this to the DNF pile. The Newsflesh Trilogy by Mira Grant. This is a zombie series, and I've read the first book, and then I also read the alternate ending to the first book, and I really like the series. It primarily follows these 2 teenagers who are brother and sister, but they're adopted, and to be honest, there's like a weird incest vibe there. I don't know if other people feel that, but like they have like weirdly, I don't know. It's something about the way that they're written and the fact that the author continuously reminds you that they're not actually related. It kind of gives me the ick, but I am enjoying it. So it's, there's been a zombie apocalypse and these kids are like bloggers basically. And so they run this blog and it's the dystopian future. So there's zombies that exist. It's just part of life. And it's following like a campaign trail for a president. And he's having these kids in their blog instead of the traditional news outlets be his like news source, if that makes sense. Which sounds really cheesy now that I'm saying it out loud, but it is fun. I am enjoying it. I've just not continued past book 1, and I should at some point. The next series is another romance series that I may or may not continue. It's the Wedding Date series. I read the first book back in December 2022, so it's been a year. Oh God, it's on the tip of my tongue. Jasmine Guillory. I don't know. It's the same name as a girl who went to my middle school, but I don't think it's that girl. If it is, that would be wild. I don't think it is, though. I think in the first book, they get stuck in an elevator together, and he asks her to go as a date to this wedding, so they fake date. And obviously, you know how that goes. And I enjoyed it, but clearly nothing's really sticking in this brain. So I'm hoping, I don't know. It doesn't really matter if I continue in that series, I guess is what I'm saying. Next series, Southern Reach by Jeff Vandermeer. Should this also be in the DNF pile? I don't know if I care about reading the other ones. I didn't really like the first one that much. Annihilation is the first book. I really love that movie. The book did not hit for me. So should I just DNF it? I vlogged my experience, so I'll link it for you. Much to think about. Much to think about. Okay, the next series is another like contemporary YA series. This book I loved, The Start of Me and You by Emery Lord. It does have a follow-up book, and I am, at this point, planning on reading it at some point. I just haven't picked it up yet, but maybe I'll do that this year. Maybe not. Stolen by Lucy Christopher. This has a sequel that's a follow-up to the first book. In the first book, this teenage girl gets kidnapped at the airport and taken to the outback of Australia, which is like a really dangerous place, and it's just about her and this guy, and like her trying to like navigate. It's like their relationship, but not a romantic relationship, but like their relationship dynamic. And it's sort of like a Stockholm syndrome thing. I really loved this book when I read it. It was so good. One of you recommended it to me. It was recommended by a subscriber, and I'm so glad I read it. It was fantastic. So I do want to read the follow-up, which is like a 10 years later thing, but I haven't made any like strides to read it. I put it on a TBR this year, didn't get to it. I would like to read it still though. Next we have The Vampire Chronicles by Anne Rice. If you've seen Interview with a Vampire, this is based on that. Or that is based on this. Yes. But it's a paranormal horror series about vampires. And I am interested in reading more of them, but I think it's all just like backstory on the characters in the first one. I don't know that it's like present day moving forward. I at least want to read book 2 and see how I feel about it. I really liked the like imagery and the vividness of the horror, but I think it was because I'd already seen the movie a bunch of times when I read this. It didn't feel that like unique to me. I don't know if that makes sense, but I do want to continue in it, obviously. Now we have some incomplete series. So Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas. And I've read the first 2 books in this series. The third book, I believe, comes out this month. So I will read that at some point, hopefully this year. I don't know exactly when I'm going to get to it, but I am caught up in that series. Supernatural Investigations by B.B. Alston. Again, I've read the first 2 books. I believe the third book should come out this year. Hopefully I will read it this year or shortly after it comes out, so I am caught up in that. The Cosmere by Brandon Sanderson. I briefly touched on this. I have finished Miss Bornera 1, I finished Miss Bornera 2, and I'm up to 2.5 in Starlight. I've also read all the books in publication date order through Edge Dancer, if that makes sense. And then also I finished Miss Bornera 2, which is not publication date order. I hope that makes sense. I don't have a list of all of the books in the series that I've read, but I do want to continue in Stormlight this year. Heartstopper series, I started it in 2021. I've read through volume 3. There's only 2 more volumes to go, and I think my library has them, so maybe I'll do that one weekend and just knock them out because they don't take long to read. They're very cute. It's like a graphic novel series about 2 boys, Nick and Charlie, and it's like their romance. And I believe one of them is already out as gay, and the other one doesn't realize that he's bi until he does. For lack of a better word. And so it just follows their relationship. I have You by Caroline Kepnes. I've read the first 2 books in this. I want to at least read the 3rd book. I guess I've only seen through the 2nd season of the show. I don't remember. But after the 1st season of the show, it divulges very distinctly from the books, which is something that I'm curious about. But I don't know. I do want to continue in the series. But none of them, like the second one didn't hit quite as hard as the first one. I didn't like it quite as much, but I am hoping to continue reading it. It's following you. So it's following Joe Goldberg, who's a serial killer, and you're inside his head. So he is talking to you as if you were the object of his desire. I really like it. I like the way it's written. I don't know. It really works for me. The Alex Stern series, I've read Ninth House. That's actually on my list to read this year. I want to reread Ninth House and then read Hellbent, because Hellbent came out a while ago, and I assume the 3rd book is soon to release. Hellbent came out over a year ago now, I think. So I need to get to it. It was one of my favorite books in 2021 when I read Ninth House, but I just need to continue and read that. ACOTAR, I read the first trilogy. I need to read Nesta's book, because I think there's going to be more in that iteration. I do plan on reading that still. So that's still on the list. Scholomance, I have read the first book. And I believe the whole trilogy is out now, so I just need to read it. So it might not even be a trilogy. Is it 4 books? I don't know, but I know 3 of the books are out. and I've only read the first one, and I do want to continue in that one. And that is the last of the uncompleted series, which that one may even be complete now, that are on my series to read list. So, whew, that was long. I have a lot of series that I'm in the middle of that I'm not finishing, that I started, that I'm whatever. Let me know in the comments down below which of these series that I'm continuing in I should prioritize, because that's like, there are so many series on this list, and I'm already planning on starting a new series this year. So I've got a lot to contemplate. I don't mind starting romance series because, again, they're usually like sort of standalone-y. That being said, Suki Stackhouse and Black Dagger Brotherhood definitely have like a thorough line through them, so they're more like a fantasy series than a romance series. They're not a series of standalones. Just putting that out there. But of these books, let me know whether you think I should DNF the series, that I'm not that interested anymore, whether you think that I should really push through and read them, especially like a Wizard of Earthsea. What other ones did I talk about? The Southern Reach trilogy. Do you think I should continue in that? I probably should just DNF that, huh? Much to think about. Okay, but that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a great new year. I don't know when this video is going up, but it's the first video I'm filming of my end of the year content. So that's very exciting for me. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to, you can subscribe to my channel because I do post 2 videos every single week, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!